Yeah.
Okay.
Going to go ahead and call the special call town council meeting November 14th to order at 9 a.m. Madam Clerk, would you call the roll?
Bell,
Here.
Here.
here,
Here.
A colleague of Mr. McQuillan. And we also have joining us virtually Steve Coe, the architect for Caplia Co. Citizen comments? Seeing none, move to the new business. The only agenda item is to consider approval of the contract with Caplia Co. H3 as the contract of record for the design of the Civic and Cultural Center addition. Just to refresh everybody's recollection, at a prior council meeting a little over a month ago, we had the council had approved the design selection committee's recommendation of Caplia Co. H3 as the architect of record for the project, authorized the mayor to enter into negotiations with regard to a contract. We'd hoped to have all of that completed by the last council meeting. We didn't quite get there, which occasioned this special call meeting. We'd gotten an initial draft. There's been a lot of back and forth. Councilmember Berner provided a series of comments, most of which I believe have been addressed, not necessarily all of them, so he may want to touch upon that. But we've actually, I want to express my appreciation to Mr. Coe and other members of his team for their willingness to engage in the back and forth, and also for the assistance of Mr. McQuillan's colleague who'd had extensive conversations. But with that background and context, I would like to entertain a motion to approve Caplia Co. as the architect of record and move forward with this contract.
So moved.
second,
Discussion.
Yes, sir. So as an overarching intro, what I'm going to be discussing are really recommendations. They're really not deal killers, but things that I would like to see. Would it be more efficient if we did this like in a page turn basis where we look at groups, or shall I just do all of mine at once?
Mine are more overarching.
All right, so, well, I'll just to kick off, I'll start. So, and you can see the kinds of things that I'm talking about. So one is Article 313. 313 deals with scheduling, meaning that the architect's going to be performing scheduling. There's a number of additions I would like to add. I would like to suggest that a schedule be provided 2 months after agreement, which would be for the entire project, not just the design. But what I want to be able to obtain is a working baseline so we as a town council can see how the project design and construction at least is going to be proceeding going forward. And if there are any events or hiccups or changes or whatever that are happening during the design phase, we can get a fair understanding of what's going to happen downstream to completion of design and completion of construction. So I would like, so in discussion, I would like add that wording into that article. At the same token, the schedule should be updated once it's prepared, about once every 2 months, give or take.
So, Councilmember Berner, I'm trying to figure out from a practical procedural standpoint. The intention is to, the hope was to actually approve this contract today. So either we're going to have very specific language for any potential changes can be potentially agreed by Mr. Coe, that we get comments from council, and if not, then we're not going to be able to move forward with.
Okay, so
today.
I understand, I completely understand that. So here's what I would suggest, adding as a supplement to Article 313. I would suggest we can do it perhaps on a bullet basis. Require the schedule to be prepared within 2 months after the agreement is executed. Require the schedule to be updated at least once every 2 months. Require the schedule to include activities for preparation of drawings for each of the trades. Require the schedule to identify significant phases, i.e. schematic, design development, and construction documents. Require the schedule to include time for the owner to review and comment on the design and allow time for revisions per the owner's comments. Require the schedule to include activities for GMP pricing activities by the construction manager. Include activities for permitting and governmental approvals that are necessary. That's the last one.
Okay, and is this the main issue, or there?
Yes, that's it. Well, that's it for that particular article.
Well, but are there similar others? I think that the challenge is going to be, Mr. Coe and his colleagues won't have had an opportunity to kind of consider these. You'd provided comments previously to the draft. I don't recall this one. But I'm struggling with kind of how the best way. We just may not be able to approve the contract again today if we're going to have a bunch of changes like this. In this case, we'll have to have another special call.
All right,
meeting.
well, these are important things. If you're entering into a big construction project like this.
We want to get it right, no question. This is the biggest project the town's ever taken on.
Yeah, and the first I saw this was when it was in my email at 3:16 yesterday afternoon.
Yes.
Mr. Bradley, can you hear us okay?
I can.
Did you hear I think it was about 7 added kind of bullet points to 3.1.3 that Councilmember Berner had wanted to add regarding scheduling?
I did, and I made some notes, and it sounds like Steve is on this call with us as well.
Right. And the question
Okay.
is, could those changes be incorporated? I mean, Stephen will have to comment, I guess, amend here, or what we need, or are they significant enough that it would require?
I don't have any issues at all with those. I mean, we were planning on doing an overall project schedule that would have included those regardless. And I mean, that's sort of what 3.1.3,
Mhm.
it doesn't go into the particulars of those specific items, but that's what would have been included. So I don't have any issue with that.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, that's a
Thank you.
normal requirement, Mr. Cole, so I'm
Sure.
sure, I'm not surprised to hear your
Yeah.
response. I'd just like to have more details.
Understood.
So, like, perhaps we can, if you would like to move that as an amendment to the contract pending before us.
So I would like to submit for approval everything that I just indicated regarding to adjustments or revisions to Article 313 for approval.
Second.
And it appears that that is acceptable to the counterparty. All in any further discussion on that item? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
All right, the next one is on 318, and this has to do with the estimating for the guaranteed maximum price, the GMP. The issue I have here in general, and I'm interested in hearing about how you guys would want to incorporate this, is the GMP price is going to be prepared after the schematic design is completed. And we don't have a mechanism that I saw in here that requires the design to be limited to the construction costs or our budget. So the issue that I have is a design is prepared and the construction manager gets retained by us. And all of a sudden, we find from the construction manager who is preparing the control estimate in Article 337, all of a sudden, we find out the project is way over budget. Well, there's another article in there later on that indicates that I have the interpretation that we then would have to pay for the cost to redesign to get it back under budget. That's not fair. So what I want to somehow incorporate are wordings that prior to the retaining of the construction manager who's going to do the real estimate, we need to have some sort of assurance that whatever the initial schematic design phase is going to be, however it's going to be prepared, is going to be within our cost estimate. And if it's not, then who's going to pay to revise it? That's a significant event to me.
This is Patrick Bradley, if I may, and Steve, if you have anything to add to this, please jump in. The section, and I don't have it off memory, but I know it's also referenced in Steve's attachment with his schedule values and scoped pricing. Essentially, the schematic, in my understanding, for Steve to confirm, it would be based on the budget and the assumptions that have been written into the contract for the actual construction and the numbers there. I think it's 9 to 12 or something like that. And then from there, by the time we enter into the next phase, the construction manager would be on board and working hand in hand with Steve. Steve, is that a good summary of a response to Mr. Berner's questions?
Correct. We are doing cost estimating during schematics. We won't have the CM's estimate, but we're doing 2 cost estimates at each, well, not in schematics because we won't have the construction manager on board at that time, but we will do a cost estimate during schematics. Our contract is based on a construction of $9.5 million so that the overall total project is within the $12 million budget. When the CM is then brought on board, we will both be doing cost estimating because the CM will do an estimate and we will do an estimate and then reconcile those numbers to be sure that what we believe it costs and what they believe it costs match. But we will not, if during schematics we are over the 9.5 million on the construction or 12 million on the total project, we're going to keep working to get to a point where we're providing you a design that meets your budget. We won't be charging for that. That's part of our responsibility is doing schematics.
Okay,
Assuming,
so Mr. Cole, that's great. I'm glad to hear that. So we need to revise the wording in Article 337 because it said, and the reason why I brought up this comment. It says, upon receipt of the construction manager's review comments and cost estimate at the conclusion of the schematic design phase. So what I just heard from you is that you guys are doing a cost estimate at the conclusion of the schematic design phase, not the construction manager. And that's good. I like that. But that's
yeah, he won't be retained at that point.
Right, exactly. That's the whole point. That's
Right.
the exact whole point. He won't be retained yet. But yet it's talking about the CM doing the cost estimate. So the wording then has to be revised to saying, at the completion of schematic design phase, your organization is going to be preparing a cost estimate to verify it's within budget.
Correct.
Right, so that's the whole comment. That's not in this, that's not in.
I think the issue is perhaps 3.3.7, where it says upon receipt of the construction manager's review comments and cost estimate. That's where you have an issue.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't think it's likely that you would have the construction manager retained during schematics. Typically,
Exactly.
we would see that at design development phase.
Exactly.
So I mean, I'm happy to change 3.3.7 to say verbiage about that we will be doing the estimate and providing that.
Because by the time the CM is retained, it's kind of too late. You're already into design development. And if it's over budget already, then we're kind of in trouble. So, I just wanted to add wording. Let's see if we can revise the wording. So for 337,
Patrick, do you have, do you get the point being made and have a suggestion on language?
I do get the point being made, and I think it may be that, you know, and Steve, correct me if I'm wrong, but your estimating companies are referenced in the contract as well, right?
Yes.
Okay.
And we have a
And-
schematic design estimate in our, yes, it's in their scope and in our fee.
Okay. Yeah, so, I mean, technically, I do think that's covered there. I think you could add just one or two caveats in 337 if you want to make sure that any pricing from a CM, when retained, is matching. But that would probably end up being a term more suited for the contract with the contractor you enter into. I feel comfortable with how it's written, but can certainly tweak it a little bit if we need to, but I don't know what practical impact that would make with how the estimating portion of the schematic is set up currently for Steve.
But I do agree that the verbiage in 3.3.7, the first sentence, which says upon receipt of the construction manager's review comments, you wouldn't have those at that time. So it's not possible to have those unless you have the CM already engaged, which we won't. So
Well,
it probably more.
okay, well then let's put if any and just call it a day there. Upon receipt, if any, of the construction managers, and then it will just default to yours.
all right, but then where would the wording be that your organization is going to do the estimate at the end of the schematic design phase? Where would that be in this contract?
I believe in the description of schematic design services, it includes, and let me go back and look at that. Give me 1 second. Description phase. Uh, 3.3.2 talks about the budget and cost of the work that we will be preparing. Hmm.
3.3.
They're part of the schematic design documents that we would be presenting. Again, if it clears it up and makes it more palatable, I'm happy on 3.3.7 to just state that the architect shall prepare a cost estimate and present it at the conclusion of schematic design phase.
That's perfect wording. That's all I'm looking for.
Yeah, that's not a problem.
Do we just want to substitute that for upon receipt of the construction managers?
Yeah.
Russ, does that address your question, your concern about if there's a cost overrun, who pays for it?
We should also then have a supplemental or an additional sentence that says such that, at the end, you know, if it's over budget, then the architect will take efforts to lower the price. I mean, something like that would be required.
The only issue I have with that is, as we have been discussing, that we are concerned that in order to provide all of the, well, let me rephrase this. We're going to agree on a design at schematics that we're going to vet with you through the whole design process. It will include, you know, all of the program that the town requires in the design. If that estimate comes in over your budget, we will work with you at no cost to continue to revise that until we get to a point that it is in your budget. However, if there are portions of the project that we cannot take out because they're elements of the design that you feel you need to have, and we are unable to get to that budget, the only recourse at that point is that it's more than the $12 million. Um,
I mean,
that's sort of the process of going through the schematic design portion. Um,
Well, I understand what you're saying, Mr. Cohen, and I'm actually, not disagreeing with it. It's just, as you would know more than anybody else in the room, is that, if things have to change, they become more expensive as you march down the road. So that's the
Yeah.
importance of having this estimate done early
yeah,
by you guys, so we can, before a whole bunch of time and effort and money is spent, we can adjust as a town council accordingly. So,
correct.
I'm
I
okay
mean-
with just putting those words in that were suggested by Mr. Cole.
And I will just add, our goal is to meet your budget. Let's make no that my goal is not to be over budget. However, as we all know, you have certain needs that must be incorporated into the project, and the market and budgets of costs are somewhat out of our control at this point in terms of what the market is. And so if there is a misalignment, the only choices are either to reduce the scope of the work, which may or may not be possible, or to
I understand.
increase the cost, which may or not be possible.
I understand.
Yep.
That's not unique.
Yeah.
Okay, so, Steph, did you get those words? Okay, thanks. So moving on, I don't want to belabor it anymore, so I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
Oh,
Motion to make that change to 337.
I submit a motion, I don't have the exact wording.
Well, it's basically to replace upon receipt of the construction manager's review and comments, and that the architect
Okay.
will provide, will.
3.3.7,
Right, so I
correct.
move what Mr. Mayor just said into the contract.
And Patrick and Steve can confirm
Yeah.
that language.
Okay.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right.
Mr. Mayor, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
So, I do have a question before we leave this topic. And mine's more, it's a line the cost issue. As the architects are moving along and they see that costs are coming in higher, is there language in here where they can come back to us and we can, work with them to talk about what we want changed? Maybe quality of materials is one that comes to mind. Or is that, we wait till we get the whole cost estimate done and then we look to revise it down? So is there a working process or is it just at the end of the process?
Expectation is we'll set up a process, and I think, Stephanie, correct me if I'm wrong, the building committee will essentially be empowered to, make those decisions once that is established, once we get on the construction, further down the path. I don't think we can bring back to the council each and every little decision regarding trade-offs.
I think we'll need to figure that out because,
Yeah.
like you said, it's the biggest project that the town's undertaken. And I think that there are decisions that should be made by council. I just don't know what those are yet.
Usually when I've worked on public projects, every decision that's going to be at least a change order, even a non-cost change order has to go through the local government.
That was going to be the general,
Well,
since my question is.
Generally, no, you would say if it's within budget, you've empowered the building committee.
Oh, that's different if it's, well,
Yeah.
Yeah.
but if there's any kind of change, even if it's just a substitution, a no-cost substitution that's going to affect quality, that has to, my experience, every public job I've worked on, that would have to go through the
So-
local government.
So
I'm just telling
I
you
don't
it's
have
fine.
any experience in that regard at all, so I can't comment. Patrick or Steve or.
I would just say for this particular building here, how it was set up was, the council essentially created the building committee. There was, the mayor was part of it, council member was part of it. They set a charter, they set essentially expectations of the board in terms of their powers and what has come back to council. Certain change orders, all change orders went before the building committee for their review and approval. The way that the council at the time had it set up was essentially then every month, any changes would then just be reflected and reported back to council. But the council and mayor, when they set the charter up, they gave certain rights and powers. That committee is a local government, so they gave certain parameters that they can approve. If it was anything outside those parameters, then it had to come back to council.
I mean, I think that sounds fine to me as long as the mayor and at least one council person is on the building committee.
That's
Because
how
we
it
need to
was
keep,
for this building.
yeah, we
That
need,
will
we
be the
need,
case.
we need to keep the process moving and not slow the process down, but we need to be able to be cost conscious at the same time. And there are always substitutions that happen during the course of a project, whether it's, the types of materials or the number of certain things you get. So I'm happy with that if we do that in that manner.
Perhaps if we resurrect that document and take a look at it, and we can offer recommendations to it. I do think that there's some things that should come before council, and I was going to ask about that when it was my turn.
The mayor will, that document will have to come before council because you're essentially you're creating a charter, so it will be reviewed and approved.
We can circulate, we'll come up with a new one, but yes,
Right.
we've looked at the old charter,
Right.
building committee charter for this facility.
That's why it's so important when we started off this whole conversation, we have to have a control estimate at the very beginning, no later than 2 months into this project, even if it's just design, so we can make these educated decisions.
Okay.
All right, so is there
There was a motion and a second. Was there a vote?
I don't think so.
Okay. There any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So I'm moving on to Article 423. This has to do with how many site visits there will be. The one that, it's really just a clarification for me. Article 423, subparagraph 3 states one inspection for any portion of the work for obtaining, for verifying whether it's substantially complete or not. And this is really for the preparation of a punch list. I don't understand when it says one inspection for any portion of the work. So does that mean you have one inspection for electrical wiring and then another for electric lights, or is it one for all electrical? So I need help understanding what any portion of the work means.
Hey, this is Patrick. Steve and I spoke about this, and Steve, please pile on after I state my piece. But he and I agreed that it made sense to keep that language because this isn't a phased project. So a lot of times, if the contract is contemplating different phases and different times that different portions would need to be substantially complete, you would have that language there to help you. But here, it's all one phase of design and one phase of construction. Therefore, there is one substantial completion inspection for the entire project. Is that right, Steve?
Correct.
Okay, so, all right, so that's a concern. I'm bringing it up to the council here. What commonly happens is you go through multiple substantial completion walkthroughs as particular elements are completed. You'll have one for electrical, one for mechanical, one for painting, one for carpeting, one for blah, blah, blah. So that means what I just heard, we're going to have one inspection, just one included in the price of this contract, I guess 1 week or so before the anticipated construction completion.
Can I jump
This
in?
is likely going to increase in price.
Can I jump in for 1 second?
Sure.
So the formal definition of substantial completion is that the project is complete and ready for the owner's use for its intended purpose. We don't do substantial completions of electrical systems or structural. We do observations of those, and you have third-party inspectors who inspect all of those before they're closed in. That's the purpose of the special inspections of our monthly or bi-weekly or bi-monthly observations. And before things are closed up, we will review and approve them, but formal definition of substantial completion per a normal and customary, and Patrick can chime in on this, but substantial completion by definition is the project is ready for its intended use by the owner. And that's all this portion, all this inspection section of 4.2.3 is going over. We do 2 inspections. We do a substantial and a final. We are required by your building department to turn in a substantial completion form that states that the project is complete, substantially complete, and then final complete. That doesn't predicate or mean that we're not doing other observations and looking at all those other systems before they're closed and tested, and we have a commissioning agent who will commission your electrical systems, all of those things.
I understand all that. And Mr. Koa, you will know as much as anybody else is that nothing ever finishes 100% on time. So you're going to have exterior lighting that's not complete, or you're going to have certain walls that the contractor put a poor wall board or got destroyed during a water event, or who knows what happened. The point that I wanted to get across to the council is that this is almost a guarantee that you're going to have a price increase because he's only including one inspection at the very, very end of the job. And that's not realistic. Something's
But-
going to
Well,
happen
that's-
that's going to require more.
Inspections, though, are different than our observations where those issues with
Yeah.
the walls or issues with the light, we will be seeing all of those and providing deficiency lists that the contractor will have to respond to and provide corrective action reports on. But again, technically, the definition of substantial is when the building is ready for occupancy and your building department deems that it is able to be occupied. They won't do that until we do a substantial completion inspection.
All right, so I just heard something that's helpful to me. You said during the course of the project, you're going to be preparing deficiency lists?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, all right, so that's going to be part of what's above in the line above that says 36 visits to the site. So during those 36 visits, you're going to be preparing deficiency lists?
We are, every time a member of my team is on site, you will receive a site observation report that documents what was observed, what is we have seen that is not compliant or deficient. That then goes to the contractor under his quality assurance plan. He has to respond to each of those items and tell us how he's going to either correct that deficiency or correct that non-conforming item. And
Okay,
we make a point that
that's helpful.
anytime any member of our team is on site, they have got to send us a report.
All right, that's very helpful. That eliminates a lot of my concerns. That's good. But I guess, so I'm okay with this in general, but I just wanted to alert the town council is that it's very likely something is going to not be done in time by the time when Cole's organization does the substantial completion inspection for 95% of the project. I understand it's for intended use of the project, but something, it's just amazing. Something always lags behind. So there's potential that there will be an additional inspection cost at some point in time. I'm just alerting you to that.
One other item I'd like to clarify on this, the contractor is required prior to us doing our substantial completion inspection, he's required to certify that the project is ready for us to perform that inspection. If we come and something is not correct under his certification, the documents will state that if additional inspections are required because of his certification was incorrect, the owner has the right to back charge the contractor for any additional costs. And that's already in
Yes, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. That's what I was about to jump in and say. That's something you
Fair
would
enough.
pass down to your contractor.
Okay, so I'm satisfied. I don't want to belabor this, so I'm going to move on. So the last item that I have is Article 425. That has to do with additional, it says here in my own language, is that if the job's not completed within 36 months, any of the architect's services will then be considered an additional service. That one gives me reason to pause because at the very end of the project, when you do as-built drawings or when you're doing these substantial completion inspections or whatever, if it's done in the 35th month, it's included in the price of this contract. If it's done in the 37th month, then it's an additional service. That gives me reason, that's just not fair. What would be fair, because I understand that, as time goes on, prices inflate, but what would be fair, if you're doing work later in time than you originally anticipated, you would be entitled to the inflated cost of doing it in the 37th month instead of sometime earlier. The way it's written here now is you get the entire cost of as-built drawings. Let's say the as-built drawings cost $20,000. Instead of just getting the inflated cost of $21,000 arguably, you would get an additional bump of $20,000 in a change order. And that's the way I read this article, and that one I have problems with.
We wouldn't be charging you double dipping. What we would be doing is, for instance, if the project is extended, and again, this says through no fault of the architect, that's important. If it's extended because the contractor, I don't know, did something that extended the duration, our construction duration, our time working on the project also extends. And what this is saying is the extension of our services beyond that time would be compensated. So anything up to that point, if it's in the contract and in our fee, we would not be asking to get those full services again. It's just from that time of extension to the time of completion. And basically it would be hourly, whatever we're working on from after that 36th month to get to the end would be an hourly charge.
Okay,
We
so
wouldn't
I
be
understand,
charging.
I understand
Go ahead.
completely what you're saying. So you're talking about the extended cost. So the kind of thing that you would be asking for compensation for would be in Article 423.2, the site visits. Instead of having 36 visits, you would have 37 or 38 visits.
Correct.
That I agree with, because then you would have an additional number of visits. But other than that, I can't think of anything else that you would be entitled to additional compensation for.
I mean, in generally, I would tend to agree. It's more about just continuing to, if there are ongoing discussions and meetings that have to take place to get the contractor to perform and close out the job, or it's really more those types of things. It's not the actual. Our scope includes providing as-built. We're going to provide those. We're going to do them once, and if he doesn't turn in the as-built to us until the 37th month, we wouldn't have charged you for the as-built at that point regardless. So, I mean, I think
Okay,
we're saying
so
the same thing.
So Mr. Coe, I'm agreeing with what you're saying. So what I'm going to submit then to the panel, a recommended change or revision to Article 425, where it says extension of architect services beyond that time, for example, monthly site visits or other meetings that are happening beyond the 36-month time period, close paren. Because I agree, so something like the substantial completion inspection would not be included in what you're saying would be an additional services. It's just what I used to call as time-dependent services.
Well, for instance, if in the 30, and I'll just say if in the 36th month, we're called to do a substantial completion inspection because the contractor is certified that he's ready. We go out and do that and we find that it's not ready. And it takes him another month to get to a point where he is substantially complete. We're in the 37th month. That would fall back on that the contractor provided a certification that he was ready and he wasn't, and therefore you could back charge him for our time. So any of our additional time you wouldn't be paying for to begin with. So I tend to agree with you that it would mostly be meetings and site visits and those types of things, but I wouldn't have an objection to that. I think that the paragraph covers it the way it's worded. I mean, this is the only edit to this paragraph was the duration, and that's what we would have to complete, but the rest of it is standard AIA language that Patrick, I think you could agree with, has been vetted through the courts and et cetera, but if we need to add a revision to this, I'm happy to do that.
Can you read back what I suggested and ask if Mr. Cole's okay with that?
Yes, Mr. Cohen and Brantley, if you're okay, after extension of architect services beyond that time, I'm not sure where you want to put the parentheses, but it's going to say, for example, monthly site visits or other meetings happening beyond the 36 months close.
Brian, yeah.
That's fine.
It says extension of architect services, and I wanted to define what those services would be. And it would be time-dependent work, such as monthly site visits and meetings.
Are you guys okay with adding those changes, Mr. Cohen, Mr. Brantley?
I am.
Yes, I'm fine if Steve's fine with it.
I'm done. Thank you, sirs.
Want to offer that as an amendment?
Oh, we have to vote on it?
Mhm.
Okay, can we, I submit that for an amendment to the contract?
Second.
Any further discussion
How-
on that item?
Yes,
Okay.
36 months. Is that the estimated time this project from start to finish?
It is.
It's actually hopefully less than that.
Design and construction,
I
yes.
assumed-
Yeah, no, I was about to say, Steve initially proposed 30 months, and I already committed him to add another 6. So I've already bought y'all 6 more months on that before we even got to this meeting. So hopefully it'll be less.
If we do our job on our end, working with them, it shouldn't take a year to do all the schematic designs and construction design work. And then the hope is that the actual construction would not take 2 years either. And the model kind of is MUSC, which was in Shovel, similar size project. The facility, shovel in the ground to completion was just about a year. Now, that may not
Not
be.
the same firm?
No,
It's not. It may not, that may not materialize, but, our hope is that, yes, this project would be done in substantially less time than 36 months.
Yeah, I do agree with that. The key to getting done is going to be during the design phase, recognizing any long lead procurement items that can take a long time to get manufactured. We may have to go to an advance award of that, but we'll deal with that when we can.
And that's one of the advantages, as I understand it, of going the construction manager at risk
Yes.
approach and getting them on board earlier in the process. And then we may have to commit then, to say,
Yes.
okay, we're going to go ahead and purchase this kind of theater seats
I see.
because they're coming from.
Yeah. I suspect you will, or we will, and that's one of the reasons why I was talking about the schedule at the beginning of this meeting, so we can get a firm understanding when that decision has to be made.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, thank you very much, Councilman.
Welcome.
So, Mr. Mayor, before we leave this, I have a tangential question to the things Russ was talking about, if I may.
Yes, please.
So 2 questions. You mentioned that, the probably true expected completion would take 30 months. And in here, there's a schedule for payments for 36. First question is, would that save us some money if we didn't have to have you do those extra 6 inspections? Mr. Coe?
Steve?
Could you say that again? I'm sorry.
In here, there's a schedule, and I'm sorry, I can't find it either, that says part of the compensation is based on 36 months of inspections. And if we
Correct.
did this in 30 months, would that save us some money on your part?
Well, our 36 inspections aren't really tied to a number of months as much as they are a number of inspections that are based loosely on the average of 2 per month. We figure 18 months of construction. But if we need to be out there 4 times a month, we'll be out there 4 times a month. I guess it goes with saying that if we have 36 visits and it's based on 2 times a month, but we need to be out there more, we're not going to charge you more because we were out there more that month. It's just a total number of about 36 visits are what we feel is adequate for this duration of a construction period.
Okay, and then there's a couple places, but I'll focus on 11-8-2, where reimburse expenses are your costs plus 10%.
Yes.
Why do we pay 10% more than your costs?
It's the office overhead and expenses dealing with the invoicing of those things. I mean,
Okay,
it's sort of a
I
standard.
understand. Yeah, your assistant scheduling the trips and all that. Okay, I get that. That's okay then.
Yeah,
Just so you know, Luke, I have the exact same question, but that's normal, unfortunately, in the construction industry. You pay over 10% markup on expenses.
Yeah, no, I don't have a problem with that. I just want to make sure I understood what it was for. Thank you.
sure.
That's all I have right now, Mr. Mayor.
Councilmember Kay, any? Councilmember Spencer?
A couple comments. I think hopefully they'll be quick. We kind of touched on them a little before. First of all, on page 27, the mayor's name spelled wrong. And
That's more than embarrassing. I'm sorry about that, Mr. Mayor. You find where that is.
I raise it administratively, but also as a substantive kind of comment. It may be an innocent typo, but we've talked about balancing pace to efficiency and to correctness. And my experience is when you start seeing typos and no spell checking, that there's possibly other mistakes under the hood. So I just think that we need to be very mindful. I relied on my colleague to handle the technical merits. I knew he would, and thank you for that. I think that we need sufficient time to make sure we have all the right reviews. This did come out very late yesterday. It's the first I've ever seen it. And, you know, for us to be responsible in this, we need to have time to thoroughly review and comment on things. That's part of why I'm interested in the document that we're going to resurrect about the charter, about what needs to come to council. There are key things that will need to come back to council. And if we have to have special calls, that's fine. But I want to make sure we've got those plugged in because I think we have a responsibility to the community as a council to approve certain things along the way. And we need to figure that out.
Certainly, certain things, yes, not, it doesn't work practically to, you know, have to, full public meeting, to have to schedule and notice a meeting with regard to every decision made with regard to the construction.
But the big stuff.
Yeah, and we'll have to figure out
Detail
how
that
best to
out.
balance that.
Yeah. The only other comment I had was when it comes to the actual requirements for the design, I didn't see that in this package. This seemed to be the contract and the T's and C's and all that stuff. For example, the resiliency committee had some great inputs, I thought, into sustainability and things like that. So I'm wondering, when are we going to see the requirements that this contract's going to be executed against?
Well, I'm not quite sure I understand the question. I mean, we're gonna be working through the schematic design. Sustainability issues were already baked into the original RFQ, and they were part of the presentations made by each of the firms.
And I see it
Now,
called out. in 13
but to your point, there was what the Resiliency Committee had recommended, for example, was LEED certification. And we had already talked about that as part of the design selection process and discussions with LEED certification. The general goals, and Steve, you can kind of correct me in the language we discussed, is fairly expensive exercise. You can achieve a lot of the objectives without actually pursuing actual certification.
And I'm not go that far, but I just am wondering when we're going to see the actual requirement that's associated with this contract, because I don't recall really seeing a final version of that.
And I believe that resiliency question consider LEED certification.
But so the program, we established the program parameters as part of the overall, when we started with the RFQ process and then part of the design selection process.
The RFQ that went out to the 6,
Went to the 12 or 13.
12 or 13,
And
whatever it
then
was.
it was further refined as part of design selection process, so component parts. But one of the things that we're going to have to sit down and work with on with regard to the architect is what are those, their design was just simply a conceptual design, a starting point. It was larger, more expensive, and had some elements that would have driven up costs beyond the notional budget. So part of this process is going to be an iterative one, working with them to narrow that down.
Mhm.
You know, the lobby doesn't need to be, since we have this lobby, necessarily 2,000 square feet. The community meeting space doesn't need to be as large as council chambers. You don't necessarily need 3 or 4 dressing rooms, for example. Those are the kinds of things we're just going to kind of focus on to try to have, you know, Steve has indicated they can design and they will endeavor design within budget. And those are the kinds of things easy to address. Where it's going to get a little more complicated is the point we've talked about theater seats for a long time. You know, you can spend a lot of money or you can spend a lot of money.
Yeah, we can get 4D seats. That'd be really helpful. Yeah.
And there's going to be some trade-offs presented at some point in time. And it may come back to us and said, yes, we can actually get a very high quality seat that was within budget. But you guys, if there was another alternative out there, this is the state of the art, whatever, but that's going to be a larger budget. We're going to have to make that kind of decision later on.
But I think you're making my point. That's really the genesis of my question is the RFQ went out months ago. We've learned a lot. We've discussed a lot. The committee is going to take some action on some things and work through it. And I'm just wondering, T's and C's are great, but they're going to execute against a requirement. And I think council needs to see what that final requirement is. And we're pushing to get this approved, but I'm wondering, okay, when this gets signed later today or whenever, and they're starting to get their pencils out, what are they designing to?
Well, they're designing to, they've already, I mean, again, we provided those materials, the program description, the project parameters. Some of that's reflected.
Pretty high level.
Some are very high level in this. But some of it is intentionally fairly high level. Because, for example, we didn't specify in the program description, you know, the number of bathrooms that are required, because that's generally formulaic.
Yeah, code's going to come up with that. Yeah.
But what we said is a 250 to 300 seat auditorium leaning towards the larger. That will dictate, for example, the number of bathrooms.
So there's not going to be a companion document to this with a requirement. That what we saw in there, there's not going to be a companion document to this with a requirement. What we saw in there is the requirement.
There is a description of the scope. I think it's on page 1 or page 2 of the agreement that
I
lists,
saw it.
that's generally the parameters.
And there was more detail provided in the program, you know, description materials or project parameter materials that we had provided previously.
Mhm.
There's not much more than, you know, integrating into this building, operationally integrating into this building, community meeting space of a estimated size, a theater of, or performance space of an estimated size, and then some additional storage in its spaces and dressing rooms.
I guess some of the things that jump to mind that I think are missing from this list are aesthetics. I mean, we could come up with a very industrial design based off of this, which I don't think is what we're seeking. The sustainability stuff, while it's called out at the very end, that there's a document that'll be referenced. I really didn't see it presented here, so I'm just, this is very high level, and
But I guess, for example, do we want to have solar panels on the roof? I guess is an example of what you're discussing.
perhaps,
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
I understand. That's a valid point.
Excuse me, can I ask you all to be a little bit closer to your microphones? Thank you.
Oh, sure.
Sorry. So-
I'm seeing a lot of Ts and Cs. I'm not seeing a lot of scope.
I think that's the type of stuff that, we have the general program parameters, kind of the building parameters. Those are some of the kinds of things that I would anticipate that the building committee will work through with the architect and the construction manager as this process goes forward.
And I think that there's some milestones in that process, like we've talked about, where council's going to want to see it and know that that's what's been directed to the architect.
Well, again, don't want to reinvent the wheel in that. I don't have particular experience having discussed this with Stephanie, at least what's done with this previous building, but both Mr. Coe and Mr. Bradley have a lot more experience in these, is that you have the council authorizes the committee to do the day-to-day blocking and tackling, and then certain decisions, and there's monthly reporting or periodic reporting, and certain major decisions, particularly anything that's outside of scope of the project or budget, would definitely come back for council approval.
Yeah, I definitely understand the difference between tactical and strategic, but I want to make sure we've got that all wired in.
Yeah, so I think Lance has a valid point. For example, we haven't defined quality, and just the cost of floor tile can change dramatically. The price of commodes and bathroom fixtures can change. So that I hear what you're saying. And I think what the mayor is identifying then is, given that it's the cost of floor tile, for example, is not defined, the building committee is going to have to be busy working hard to make sure we get something that looks good within the budget we have. And that goes back to how important it is to have a budget within 2 months of the project, of the contract being executed, so we can start making those decisions, because that budget prepared 2 months after execution of the contract is going to have to include some cost per foot for floor tile. And that's what we're going to have to start drilling down on.
This is, I mean, it's inherently subjective in this kind of characterization, but Steve, we had this discussion. We had this discussion with each of the firms as part of the design selection process, is kind of what the expectations were with regard to level of quality, generally speaking. That won't necessarily apply equally to each and every element, but the starting point was kind of we're not trying to build a turbocharged, Mercedes or something, more like a Lexus, and something that is a step up in quality from this building, but not a Taj Mahal. And that is inherently subjective, and that's kind of what the architect's job is going to be, to help us guide us as to what's the level of quality of this fixture, this component, compared to your budget. And if we want something that is much grander, then we've got to be prepared to pay for that.
And my comment, I don't think is a showstopper for today, for this document. I just want to make sure we've got that all identified, and we have in quick turn, figure all that out. Russ's point hit home with me. I went to Floor and Decor twice yesterday, and it was all about quality. So, there's a broad range, and you start talking about this scope and scale. It could really drive costs, it could drive aesthetics, it could drive future appreciation of the building by coming generations. I've heard comments about this building, pro and con.
Yep.
And, as we think through that, I want to make sure that in that document we're going to review and update, that there are some key decisions that need to come back to council, and I want to make sure those are in there.
I'm on the same page with both of you. And I think that maybe one of the things we might want to need to do as a council is to think about philosophically where we want to spend our money. Do we want to spend our money on molding or floor tile? Do you want to spend your money on the exterior or the interior? Do you want to spend it on, what's the philosophy when you come to kind of the nuts and bolts of choosing what you want to see and where you want to spend your dollars? What's important to us or what's important to the town? So it's another way to think about kind of giving direction to the architects and then giving direction to the contractors or pricing things out. Where do we want to spend our money and where do we want to save our money?
Well, based upon my conversation with Steve, indeed with all the firms, is we're looking to them for their expertise and where are the biggest trade-offs in cost with regard to interior components, things like theater, the theater seats themselves, the level of acoustic design, the quality of the flooring and things like that. But they're going to have to inform us. They have the expertise in this as to, where do you get your most bang for your buck? And if you guys want to spend more here, here's what we think we would recommend over here at a lower price point without degrading or diminishing the overall quality of the product.
And at whatever design review phase that comes in, the building committee would make a recommendation to council. Here's what we've considered.
Yeah.
Here's what we advise. Here's the trades we considered, and please approve.
We're going to be busy.
So again, I think we need to be careful there. Not every one of those decisions, the
I
building
understand
committee,
project management.
yeah, building committee has to be empowered to make those decisions because decisions have to be
We need to
made.
decide what decisions they're empowered to make. I agree they need to make decisions.
Yeah.
Not all decisions.
And kind of at the foundation of all of this, from my perspective, as a council, we function well delegating off responsibilities. And I have been very comfortable delegating the nuts and bolts of this project to the two of you in your committee. And really appreciate the magnifying glass that you put to this, Russ, because I would not have come up with any of that stuff. But it's important to me not to make the decisions on things like floor tiles. I'm very happy delegating that to the committee. But I do need to, so that, to Lance's point, so that I feel comfortable supporting this entire project out to the community, I do need some kind of regular big picture updates. And again, because of schedules and stuff, I just haven't been at all kept up to date.
Test.
Oh, that's all right.
Hello?
So
Hello?
if we could,
I can
if we could
figure it
build
out.
some kind of process into this where at least on some kind of a regular basis, big picture comes back.
You're done, Erica.
so that- Or.
I mean, there should be a regular cadence of reporting out. Yes, no question about that, at the very least.
Okay. That's.
I will offer, I very much enjoy doing those big picture updates. There's not an additional charge for me to come and do a PowerPoint presentation at milestones. I think that the more informed you as a client are, the better the project is. So we do those on a regular basis as often as you want us to.
Thank you, Steve. Anything further at this time? We do have an underlying motion. Several amendments to that, to the contract have been, the contract has been amended, I think, in 4 respects. And now I would call for a vote on the contract as amended.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Aye.
Okay. Any further citizen comments? Council member, yes. Thank.
Mr. Mayor, could you repeat the question or have them come to the podium, please?
Yes, we did have a citizen comment. She did not come to the microphone. She was just urging us to have the auditorium facility as large as possible. So, any council member comments?
Well, thank you.
Thank you to the committee.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Coe. Thank you, Mr. Bradley. The special call meeting is now adjourned. Thank you.